In a reaction, 9 moles of Xe and 10 moles of F2 react by this equation. Xe plus 3F2 yields XeF6. Show your work to determine the limiting reactant. So our very first step here is we need to list underneath our equation what we have and what we're looking for. So our problem tells us that we have 9 moles of Xe and that we have 18 moles of F2. Ultimately, we're trying to figure out how much product we can make. Since we're starting in moles, we'll solve in moles. That means we're going to go from Xe into our product and from F2 into our product. We'll start by listing what we have for each. So for 9 moles of Xe, I want to go from moles of Xe into moles of XeF6. I do that by using my mole ratio. Remember that your mole ratio is the coefficient in front of each of your compounds. In my next bracket, I want moles of Xe to cancel out, meaning it goes at the bottom, and I'm trying to turn it into moles of XeF6. By looking at my mole ratio, the value in front of Xe, or the coefficient, is 1, and the value or the coefficient in front of XeF6 is 1, meaning I have a mole ratio of 1 to 1. When I take 9 times 1 divided by 1, I get 9 moles of XeF6. So this means if I react 9 moles of Xe, I should get a total of 9 moles of product. So using all of that reactant, how much product do I make? 9 moles. Now let's look at F2. I'll solve this one in a different color for you. If I start with 18 moles of F2, in this bracket I want F2 to cancel out, meaning moles of F2 should go on the bottom, and I'm still trying to turn it into moles of XeF6. Looking at my ratio, I get 3 for every value of F2, and I still have a 1 in front of XeF6. When I solve, I take 18 times 1 divided by 3. I get a value of 6 moles of XeF6. And so what this means is if I use all of my Xe or my xenon, I make 9 moles of product. If I use all of my F2 or fluorine, I make 6 moles of product. The limiting reactant is the reactant that produces the least amount of product. The least amount of product in this case is 6 moles, which is produced by the reactant F2. So on the bottom, what is the limiting reactant? F2 is the limiting reactant. The excess reactant is the reactant that produces the most amount of product, in our case, Xe, and the theoretical yield is the amount of product that you can produce based on your limiting reactant. So in the situation above, 6 moles of XeF6 is our theoretical yield. And again, that theoretical yield is the stoichiometric amount, so the amount that you solved or calculated, that the limiting reactant can produce. And the limiting reactant is the reactant that produces the least amount of product. Make sure that when you're identifying the limiting reactant, you are in fact choosing a reactant, so something that sits on the left side of the arrow. Everything on the left side of the arrow is a reactant, everything on the right side of the arrow is a product.